Hello, intrepid viewers. Dr. Lena Rodriguez coming to you from tomorrow, and tomorrow is your big day with the protests. But we're already here. It's Saturday. Now, the whirlwind that has been taking place. And is it just me, or is Caroline Levitt one of the most irritating young women in the Northern Hemisphere? What is it with her trying to spin this stuff? And I think she actually believes it. I'm not going to bother pulling cards on whether she does or doesn't, but I think she actually believes the spin. But there she is. She reminds me of the Bride of Chucky. Does anyone remember that movie? There she is, the Bride of Chucky, spewing forth this absolute nonsense. Oh my God. But before we get into the nitty-gritty stateside, I want to go global. Go global first, then we'll hone in. Now, the Yeti has been working at full blast, severing ties with the entire world. So apart from withdrawing from the WHO Health, UNESCO, the whole United Nations, anything that bonds countries, he has set out to destroy. And in case you missed this, he's closing off 27 embassies around the world. I think for most people it'll be a relief. But anyway, it's not a good look. And, you know, it hasn't happened in the last 400 years, but he's always up for a first. They're cutting the Fulbright scholarships that are globally recognised. And now he has banned all the wire services. I'm amazed they lasted this long. They've almost lasted 100 days because they happen to ask the odd real question. And it's like off with their heads. So I'm going to have a look here at how things are going globally. And I'll also be using the predictions deck along with my own One World Tarot. So on the global scene, let's have a look here how other countries are reacting to it, because it's like anything with the Yeti, it's shock and awe, and then you have to adjust. You know, we're watching our retirement funds get chewed away by the rats. Oh, so Trump and the rest of the world. Okay, here we go. All right, that's the first lot. Now with these prediction decks, oh, let's see what this breaks down to. This is people being off balance. Hello, you know, you had certain trade deals that were locked in. Most of them had been revisited in some way in his first incarnation, particularly the NAFTA that became the unpronounceable Uzumka, which he drove as a deal and then said it was the worst deal in the world. I mean, anyway, everyone off balance. But here comes victory and judgment. So my feel on this is people are calling him out and making other deals. This is the victory of other nations joining together. And they don't trust him. And so this is the final time everyone's been prepared to do some sort of negotiation. And then he goes on international news and says, they're lining up to kiss my ass. Well, that meant that probably 87 countries that were about to ring him thought, you know what, we're putting down the phone. So this is a victory for other people, I think, in that sense. But it's not just smooth sailing and, oh, well, we're done with the US. Because the US was so embedded in all our big macroeconomic movements, it's causing instability everywhere. This is not fun. If you'd asked Australians in the last 40 years, 30 years, 20, oh, the US is this and that. But it's always been there as a backdrop and always assumed to be an ally because we went into every conflict with you guys. We also house the biggest spice espionage, not espionage, what's surveillance, better word, in the Southern Hemisphere because of you guys. But instability everywhere. Now, rest of the world from another deck. Resigns and leaves office. Who is it? Oh, Vance wouldn't resign, is it? He's in it to get the big chair. Be fun. We know Musk is going. Oh, Jay Powell would have to be pushed. We'll look at Jay Powell in a moment. But it has to be significant. Someone resigns. Let me know what you think the someone is about. Health Matter, right beside, might have answered my own questions, could be RFK, who's up to his testicles in drama, mayhem, chaos, and misinformation. Could be RFK Jr. Now, back to the world, because I'm sorry, I digress already. You think, what has health got to do with the rest of the world? Well, everything, because the cutting with US aid and all of that impacts the health of millions and millions of people. And I think it's disgusting in moral terms to have cut the antiviral drugs for HIV/AIDS, which is now going to come back. So irresponsible and affects everyone. Rescue revived. So I think this is countries are now going to each other's rescue, right? So people who have been bashed around by the Yeti and by these imbecilic, indefensible, gobsmackingly awful tariffs are starting to form radical realignments. I mean, things we would never have dreamt of before. I think we have to, because I was just watching one of our better news broadcasters, the Australian Broadcasting Association, ABC Asia, was saying last night 60 to 70% of Chinese container ships are now stalled. 60 to 70. Now, we know how much China sells to the rest of the world. Every one of us is in a Chinese-made T-shirt or wearing Chinese-made glasses or whatever in all our worlds, every umbrella, everything, not to mention technologies and vehicles and the bigger white goods. So 60 to 70% have been stalled, and some are in Chinese waters and have been ordered not to leave yet. Others were halfway to the US and are docked in a huge selection of other ports. And another faction of them have reached US waters, but have been given the command not to unload yet. I think we have to have a look at that, not to unload yet, meaning your first port of call is until the tariffs get sorted, and 148% of tariffs or 170 or wherever it ended up for China. But also it could be a standoff as a power play. Let's have a quick look. I'll use these other cards for the China-US scenario now. China-US. China-US. These are great for the quick and punchy. China-US. Okay. Oh, okay. Let me share. These are a bit hard to read at first glance. Tsunami and rising waters. We're talking about ships literally on water, but also rising waters mean, as far as I'm concerned, short-term outcome, which I'd put at a month or two, are going to go higher, not lower, or at least not be resolved. Planned outcome. This is China making a plan. Okay, China's really good at plans. Food shortage. Food shortage. I don't think that means people curled up starving on the side of the road. What it does mean is, and it has to be happening soon, if not already, things that you used to be able to swan into your grocery store and buy, suddenly there mightn't be the Mexican avocados or tomatoes and things like that. I think we are going to see, I'll call it now, shortage of supplies, food shortage. Oh my God. Now, the Fed, the Yeti, in his indomitable fashion, if there's an institution left standing, how can I blow it up or knock it down? That's his only criteria in his pathetically abusive brain. So now he's muttering about sacking Jay Powell. We know Jay Powell has had legal advice. The problem is with legal advice, it assumes there's a working court system. So his legal advice was, don't worry, Mr. Powell, he can't do that, meaning the Yeti can't do. There's nothing he can't do, you know? So what's going to happen with Jay Powell moving forward? Will he be replaced? Will he be replaced? His term goes for more than another year, but will he be replaced? Because the Yeti hates bad news. Talk about shoot the messenger. Okay. All right. It starts off for now, slow and steady, right? He's all right for now, but that might be 3 days. Like he's solid, but the important point is he represents solidity to the rest of the world as well as the United States. Queen of Wands comes in. Normally, it's one of my favorite cards, strong, no-nonsense woman, but I think it might be the babe from Baywatch. I think this could be Bondi. Judgment call. This DOJ will back him up in any capacity. This is not going to be a fun outcome for any party. So with this, I would say, yeah, I mean, it's all right. I'll just speak to my housemate. It's all right. You're not on camera. Just go. Um, this can also be misinformation and miscommunication. So I think he is. He's going to try and sack Jay Powell. Will it go to various courts? Yes, but is it enough? Which brings us to the Supreme Court. Now, I'm just a humble tarot reader from Australia. However, I can't be the only person thinking none of this is going to get better until the Supreme Court reverses its absolute immunity. They rode roughshod over all legal precedent and pushed back on the very sound legal judgments that they were given. They had an out. You know, the legal eagles were swooning over the beautiful and exquisite wording that gave them cover, and they defied all that. They gave him immunity. So Tick, tick, tick. Reverse it. Reverse it. Hang a minute. Please, someone put that on a sign for me, the protest. Reverse immunity. SCOTUS. Oh my God. Now, where are we? Now, oh yeah, the red states. I'm excited about that. Um, but, I want to talk a minute about Charlie Angus in Canada and Tim Walz, who's sort of now part of, I don't know if it's officially or side by side, the Fight Oligarchy tour. Um, but I'm loving the energy of Charlie Angus and Tim Walz. They represent that really solid, compassionate, no nonsense masculinities going forward. They're a counterfoil to the chest beating Neanderthals in the White House and the broligarchy. So they have a really important role to play. And they're both at a really good age and stage of careers. In other words, their first port of call isn't to their gerontologist. You know, they're mid-career. So I just wanted to shout out to those guys. Oh, I know what I want to look at. Speaking of the broligarchy and all of that, we know now Joe Rogan has actually taken a beating in terms of numbers and in terms of supporting the Yeti at that critical time, just leading into the election, and so forth. And there's a list of hideous, arrogant, caustic, unthinking, selfish, right-wing podcasters, no shortage of them, Joe Shapiro, all of it. But they're starting to turn. They're starting to turn. Now, let's see where it's going with right-wing podcasters because they are very good at siphoning off the men's vote, right? And we need the good masculinity, not the toxic masculinity. So let's have a look going forward with these right-wing pundits who tend to be zillionaires, like one of them wasn't one of those, it was another one. I'd never heard of him, but and he was whinging. He was actually on camera whining, going, I lost 7 billion in the last 2 days when the stock market crashed. You lost 7 billion? It might have been million, but it almost doesn't matter. It was a colossal amount of money, and he was whining about it, having promoted the Yeti. Sympathy factor, sub-zero. But sorry, I'll just finish that point. I think a lot of the young men who follow these guys aren't aware of how rich they are on the backs of pumping this right-wing stuff. Sure, they'd know the big names, but some of these other mid-range ones who are making a fortune, you know, unlike the Midas Touch who do the little in-house sponsorships for good quality honey and stuff. I mean, the league of difference. Okay, so what's going to happen with the boys' club? Oh. Well, this is them literally in Twitterverse. This Page of Swords, the upraised swords, they're outraged about everything, that the country's going to hell and women won't date me and men won't date me because I can't talk about that. And I'm just angry. Them with their false message. They're still making money off the false message, but this is also fool's gold. And I think it's sort of tying into what I was just saying about if people start to realize that groveling to the uber rich is actually not a life plan. Pet. Now, the card that actually made me smile or smirk, I'll admit it, the Justice card. It's kind of, you know what? The scales are shifting. People aren't as enamored as they were with these guys. Right? Hmm. They're still getting audiences that are huge, but there is a shift. This represents a shift. Oh, goody, goody. Now, let me just check here. They have let the Democratic senator in to talk with the Garcia in El Salvador. Don't get too excited about that because they had to be seen to be doing something. And so now they can say, look, the prison can't be that bad. Look, they let us in. Now, Australia does not have a good record on this stuff. In fact, it's a shameful record. So we started, modern white Australia started as a convict colony, sending people from the UK to the furthest point in the world as punishment, right? So that's how we started. Then things sort of got better and and it became the working class dream destination for years. Then neoliberalism and started to go downhill, people dismantling the unions and all of that, thanks to Reagan, Thatcher, and that whole movement. But in the 90s, we had our worst Conservative government in a very long time, and they introduced offshore processing, except no processing got done. But a hideous term. It's like treating people like a can of tuna, just dreadful. So this was to stop the boats. That was the stated goal, like the Yeti in the border war, right? Because we are a large island, stop the boats. Now, who was coming on the boats? Totally displaced people from the wars that we in the West, the US, UK, Australia, everyone went and displaced people from Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on. Now, most went to other countries, but a small percentage, very small percentage, would make their way overland from these countries all the way to Indonesia, thousands of miles, and then pay people smugglers to get them on leaky boats from Indonesia to the north and west of Australia because it's not many miles, but the boats were terrible. And people died in that process. There was a scandal called the Children Overboard scandal. That was the first time we as Australians saw CGI or doctored footage in that way. So this Conservative government said, look, we've got video evidence of these people throwing their babies off the boat. That's what animals they are. That's what depraved people they are. We can't. No, it was desperate people trying to get their babies into the arms of the maritime rescuers. But they cut the footage here. How disgusting. Then the Australian government put these people in obscure islands where Australia had territorial access, and politicians weren't allowed to visit. Doctors had to sign non-disclosure agreements. All the workers had to, etc., etc. Now, that was done under a fiendish government. But when our Labor got back in, the Dems, they eventually got the children out of detention. Hello, I'll let that sentence settle because there were children in these detention centres, but they didn't close them until very recently. So I just want to keep the record straight so you don't think I'm just US bashing. But look, on to lighter and brighter things. And I think this is really important. The boycotts are going really well. So the boycotts of Tesla all over the world in the 70% range, right? Massive. Walmart and Target, people power. Democracy historically gets saved from the bottom up. So keep up those boycotts. And a shout out to Boise, Idaho, who refused to take down the rainbow flag. These are little points of resistance that are massive in the big picture. Really, really, really important. So Salt Lake City is getting big turnouts for the Fight Oligarch tour, etc. Well, Latter-day Saints are not impressed either. They're losing health services. They're losing social security services. They're watching things being dismantled. So Idaho, Salt Lake City, AOC, and I think this is the key. AOC, wherever she is, takes the trouble to name and shame the Republicans in that state, in that county, wherever they are. And this is what the Dems have to do every single time. Instead of talking generically about the GOP, no, talk about this person and that person who voted for this. Name and shame. Love that. Now, I want to pull some cards for you guys, but before I do that, thanks for all those responses. There were hundreds of comments. I found them so heartening about what people are doing to save money and stay sane in the face of the gaslighting and all of that. Tips for not just survival, but for flourishing in a time of adversity. So thank you for all those comments. It's so important. And just a few examples. One viewer has said she's now sourcing coffee from Hawaii. Now, Hawaii grows beautiful coffee, gorgeous coffee. And so instead of the exploitative arrangements with other places, she's got together, her aim was to, because it's only domestic freight, so it doesn't cost the earth to bring, she wanted people to buy, who was prepared to buy 10 pounds of coffee each, and she was hoping for 5 people or something. And it went out through her network, her workplace and her social network, and they're bringing in £100 and they think that'll go off from there. So think laterally, where else can you source things? How do you group together? You might be a hermit by nature. Doesn't matter. You can make the connections online and you only have to engage for 10 minutes with people while you pick up your product that has been bought in bulk. So keep going with those suggestions. They're great. But my position is bring back the barter system. Go for it. Wherever you can eliminate currency, go for it. Have you got something to swap for something else? So buying in bulk and swapping, keeping up the boycotts, let people know when you find another source for some product that people want that's outside Walmart or Target, let people in your area know. You don't have to go door knocking, just let them know. There must be some local site. So these things, I think, are just massively important. Okay, now, you guys going forward, starting with tomorrow and the protests and beyond, let's look at the next week or so. Sorry. Goody. All right. Now, the power card that you guys got. The magician. The magician. The magician has all the tools. So in other words, think about all those powerful worlds that you think about. If you're a vaguely alternative person, you're not a stranger to words like transformation, adaptation, manifestation. Now keep that in mind while we look at the next three cards. Emotion and the dove of peace. So I'm really hoping that this will all be peaceful, but it is emotional. When you're part of the resistance, it is emotional in a good way. And literally thousands of you have given me feedback how amazing it was, because you get so battered around in your own echo chamber that you are just scared to look up. Be brave, look up and look out and engage in that positive emotion. Now, going forward, and we're only talking about the next week or so, keep juggling, because there will be misinformation out there. I would say the numbers in the protests will be huge, and again, not being covered enough, or lies about the number in any place. So be prepared for that. Don't be surprised. You know what really happens. So whether you're a physical participant or not, lending your energy to the resistance is what is important. This is people power made manifest. All right, guys. Best of luck with it all. And I'll see you soon. There was something else, I think. It's flown out of my jittery brain. All right, take care, guys. Yesterday I went to a Cuban dance party, and I would recommend, if you haven't been out to live music in a while, get out there. It's fabulous. Bye.